What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show / this is kind of a live before lock because we've got an early slate. We've got a main slate. We've got slates all over the place. I think Chris even wanted to talk about some turbo slate that's going on this afternoon. If he wants to, maybe we'll throw a bonus round in there. Appreciate you guys already being here. Hit that like button, subscribe button as you guys get in here talking a little baseball action. And I got just the guy to break it down with. That's my guy, Chris Pennell over there. Chris Pennell, 16 over on the Twitters. How you doing, my dude?
Doing good. How about you? I'm looking forward to our second show together.
Well, I was just super quiet, run sheet, filling everything out before the show because, you know, it's a lot of slates going around. I don't know what just happened with all of this Oakland madness because it seems as though that game's going on earlier and it won't be on the main slate, even though it's listed on DK still. We'll see. I guess we can talk about it for a second at the very end of that main slate, just because I think it'll probably end up getting pushed off if, you know, the timing is actually moved up. Regardless, we've got 7 games on the main slate. We've got 5 games on the early slate. We're going to start with the main, work to the early, give you guys the most relevant information if you guys are listening to this after the fact. So looking forward to it. Anything else that sticks out to you on these multitude of slates today?
No, we just have a lot to talk about. So it's a good thing we're not directly up against another show coming up because it looks like we might be here for a little bit.
Yeah, we're not going nowhere. Let's get to it, shall we? Main slate, I'm looking at Arizona plus 115 at Washington. 8 total runs here in this one. Merrill Kelly versus Eric Fetty. That's my bit. It's not a good bit. It's just a bit that exists. Did you watch Boy Meets World growing up?
I've not.
See, that's sad. Otherwise, you would have understood. Did Tyler watch Boy Meets World? I don't think he did.
Yeah, I'm way too young for Boy Meets World, but I watched reruns of it and stuff because I have culture.
Because you do have culture. Look at that. Kind of a shot taken at Chris. But either way, Merrill Kelly, he's a guy that so far in the early going, that K rate up to 34.2%. I don't think that's going to be sustainable for him. He's been around a career 20.5% strikeout guy. Walks have been a tiny bit up here for him this season, but a 2.6 expected ERA is yet to give up a run at 34 years of age. Best start to a season, perhaps, in his in his old major league career. How do you view Merrill Kelly on this slate?
Yeah, Merrill Kelly's okay for real life purposes. When it comes to DFS, I've just never really been a fan. I know the strikeouts have been there so far this year. We're talking 13 strikeouts versus 2 decently tough matchups versus Houston and San Diego, but we're talking about a guy since 2021 who has a 4.1 xFIP, about a 20% K rate. I just don't see a whole lot of upside here. I'd rather get to some of the Nationals bats like Juan Soto, Nelson Cruz, Josh Bell, and Cesar Hernandez over getting to Merrill Kelly today.
Are they good?
Soto and Cruz are good.
I'm just saying that was being a little facetious because they're freaking good. We're going to learn each other's humor. You're going to realize that I'm a nerd. I like baseball very, very much. And when I say things like, oh, he hits baseballs hard, it's usually me just making a joke of, you know, the whole scenario because, you know, I could sit up here and I can tell you the Juan Soto 598 expected slugging here in the early going, 453 ex-WOBA in the early going of this season, 37 batted ball events. Those seem like good numbers, things you want to be invested in. Nelson Cruz, 45-year sample size of him just crushing baseballs, 486 expected slugging here as well. And Josh Bell, he was kind of the 2-man game I played once upon a time with this team. Now you get Nelson Cruz. That becomes a 3-man squad. It's another wolf in the wolf pack. But I'm looking at the Washington side of this on the mound for them. Eric Fetty, never the most intriguing DFS option by any means. I'm always trying to stack up against him, but it always feels like somehow he's surviving. He can't keep getting away with this. 3.96 expected ERA in the early going of this season, 4.89. He's seen some positive regression every single season on that expected ERA, but this isn't a guy you're trying to get to on this slate and like going out of your way to get on this slate, should I say. Is it?
No, I've never played Eric Fetty. The thing is, though, I'm right there with you. I usually try to stack against Eric Fetty because it makes sense on paper, but he always gets away with it. I'm not sure what it is. Like, he's a 4 xFIP pitcher with a 22% K rate. While that's not terrible, it's like nothing you ever want to do for DFS purposes. Arizona has struggled versus right-handed pitching since last season. I know their lineup has changed up a little bit. Currently, right now, they're looking at a 20.6% K rate overall, which isn't terrible. It does get a little bit worse versus righties. But as far as wanting to use Eric Fetty, I would not really plan on doing that tonight.
I wouldn't plan on it either, but the top pitchers tool is a thing. He's got the 5th best chances of finishing as a top 2 pitcher. The options are bleak. In this mid-range. he falls into that mid-range kind of pool, should I say? I don't even really know how to put it. But only 3.7% ownership. So there's a lot of positive leverage going to him against an Arizona lineup that I think that's kind of the reason why you might have some interest in it. Outside of the Varsho shot, you can always take where he's a catcher outfielder and you have the ability to roster him multiple spots and he always ends up popular. Kendall Marte, who's the one major league hitter in this lineup. Christian Walker's hitting the ball hard, but for the most part, not a very imposing lineup. Anything from Arizona you really want to isolate?
No, the only guy I usually ever have interest in is Dalton Varsho, just because you have that catcher eligibility that's leading off. You can also get him into the outfield, but outside of that, it's a lineup that just doesn't really have much name value. And outside of Kendall Marte, it's not very imposing either.
Yep, not very good. Not very good at all. I don't really have anything else to add in that regard. I mean, looking at the top stacks tool for them, Arizona middle of the road looks like a little bit of negative leverage. Most people like me trying to stack up against Fetty and doesn't necessarily always work. I might have a little bit more interest in Fetty in this one. I can guarantee you I've never said that before on a show in 2 years. So take that for what you will. From the Washington side, looks like there's positive leverage going their way. We talked about all of the main guys. Anybody else that you might want to add to that three-man game of Soto, Bell, and Mr. Nelson Cruz?
It does get pretty ugly in the bottom half. Maikel Franco is always the guy that's maybe somewhat intriguing for me. You get that lefty on righty matchup, but outside of that, it's just nothing that's really like you have Yadiel Hernandez, Maikel Franco, Alcides Escobar, Victor Robles. Like the top half is really the only appealing part. Outside of that, it's not very pretty.
Yeah, JM, anyone versus Arizona is an option. Correct, my friend. That is the right way of looking at this. Anything else from this game?
No, it's not like on both sides. That's not something I'm really too intrigued about. I think there's definitely better games on this slate.
I would agree. Look at you, concise, making up time. Started 2 minutes late because, I'm just getting adjusted to life. Let's go to Toronto. We've got, I wrote 9.5. That is incorrect. I'm assuming that's 4.5 for the Toronto Blue Jays going up against Boston. 9 total runs here in this one. Yeah, 4.5. There you go. Jose Barrios, my former twin, on the mound here. I've never really believed in this guy that much. There was definitely some negative regression coming in store for him in the course of his major league season. Oh boy, have we seen that in the early going of this season. 16.1% K percentage, 14.71 expected ERA with a 2.63 whip. A lot of problems with him. And now he's going up against a Boston Red Sox offense. I said the mid-range pitching options are pretty bleak. We've got some studs on the mound, but at 7,300, he's a top 2 pitcher 18.2% of the time, but he's getting around 22.6% ownership. I don't know what to do with him. It feels uncomfortable. What do you plan to do with Jose Barrios?
I would rather get to the bats on both sides of this game, plus run a pretty hitter from the park over in Fenway. But I know Barrios has been really awful so far to start this year. If you expand it to a bigger sample size, which is what we usually like to do in baseball, he's still a very solid pitcher. 3.6 xFIP, 25.7% K rate. Doesn't really walk too many guys. Doesn't give up a ton of power, but like I said, I do prefer the bats in this game. And we know Boston's got plenty of good bats here. Kike Hernandez, Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Shady Martinez, Verdugo, Trevor Story. I mean, when you can have Trevor Story batting near the bottom half of your lineup, it is pretty darn good. And even the bottom half is not terrible. So while I think Barrios will be fine, I'd still rather get to the Boston bats.
I'm looking at Trevor Story's StatCast. It is not pretty in the early going. 22.2% hard hit percentage. 277 expected slugging with a 31% strikeout rate and not getting on base in the walk department, 6.9% walk rate. Not ideal. Hopefully there's some positive regression. Once again, he's a dude you got to expect to be hitting eventually. Yeah, you remove him from Coors Field, but Fenway, still pretty decent little spot. I'm not gonna write him off yet, but bottom 1% of barrel percentage in all of Major League Baseball right now. That's what I'm sure Boston was paying for. They were looking forward to that. Let's talk Nick Pavetta here on the other side. This has not been a very good start for him either. 929 expected slugging, just a 17.1% K rate. I feel like this guy, 26.5% K rate in 2021, has some good things in store for him coming down the pipeline soon, but it hasn't looked good. Hasn't looked good at all. And now he's facing Toronto. That's not going to cure a lot of problems. How do you view Nick Pavetta on this slate?
Pavetta's a guy where he's interesting in some spots just because he does flash that strikeout upside, but he's also a guy that does struggle with control and he can give him some power. And that's not a good profile to have versus a team like the Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, we are missing Teoscar Hernandez. We no longer have Marcus Semien, but this is still a lineup that can absolutely mashed, whether it's versus lefties or righties. We have George Springer, Bo Bichette, Vlad, Gurriel, Zach Collins, who I believe went deep last night. You could play him at catcher. Chapman, Kirk, Tapia, Espinal. Top to bottom. Bottom half falls off a little bit, but this is still in a really, really good lineup with a pretty good implied team total today.
I mean, these are just two phenomenal offenses, top to bottom. You have opportunities to get to them. It's just really hard to look at either pitcher as guys that I want to be playing a lot of, especially if you're going to see Berrios around 22, 23%, almost like salary or savings by default. I would rather take shots on Dane Dunning. I'd rather take shots on Marcus Stroman, which sounds horrendous, but they're just completely unowned. And Berrios, it just feels like the guy who's going to get a ton of attention in this mid-range. And it's a pitcher I'm just willing to stack against and willing. I've always been willing to kind of short, even though back in his Twins days, I was cheering for him, just maybe not with my wallet. Favorite batter from Toronto always feels ridiculous to say, because how could it not be Vlad, not price considered, but who's your favorite non-Vlad bat to get to if you're going to try to isolate one or two guys?
Besides the obvious, I think Zach Collins is a pretty good option if you're looking for a catch eligibility. He's below 3K. He's got some pop versus righties. So just to be a little bit contrarian, I guess you want to call it that, we'll go with Collins.
And your favorite bat from the Boston side?
I usually love playing Rafael Devers. I don't know why, but I always seem to be a little bit overweight on him. I just love when he's facing a righty. I know it's a bit of a steep price point, nearly $6,000, but I think he has the best home run upside here. You
like rostering good hitters. That seems like a good way to play DFS.
He's just so expensive compared to the other like elite names. You know what I mean?
But he's at third base, and third base, no offense to everybody else in Major League Baseball, probably the crappiest I've ever seen in terms of like year long. Look at the ownership of third base today. Gio Urshela, 29.4%. Gio Urshela, this guy couldn't hit in New York, and now he's on the Twins, and probably be up in the order this time around, going up against Lynch, where it's a lefty on the mound. But you're basically punting this position with Urshela and Witt Jr., and then the entire board opens up for just not a very good position. Suarez has been hitting the ball a lot better here of late. Homered again yesterday, I know, at least. He's definitely shown a little bit of upside already here this season. Back to some of his Cincinnati days. Good times, but man, third base has been very, very bleak. I mean, Matt Chapman, third base, 4,200 here on the other side of this game, 5.4%. Hasn't been a terrific start, but I'm willing to go back to some Matt Chapman as well. That might be the guy on Toronto just because of the position I get to a lot. Anything else from this game for you, sir?
No, I'm definitely a big fan of the bats compared to the pitching.
All right, we're making really good time. And as such, I get to talk about Awesemo plus tools and content. $29.95 for the weekly pass here. Do you guys want premium content? I do. Do you want all the best tools, whether it's the top pitchers tool, top stacks tool, everything we have to offer behind the paywall here for MLB? I bet you do as well. $4.95 for the weekly pass in that department. But we still have NBA going on, where the boom bust tool, really helpful yesterday. Talking about the top drivers tool, that is your jam in the NASCAR streets. Definitely check out Chris Pennell and all of his work over on YouTube. But that top drivers tool does a lot of the work for you in terms of building DFS lineups and just the best data forward tools you're going to find in the industry here at Awesemo. So $29.95 for the weekly pass. That is everything behind the paywall. So stop guessing, start winning, and join us here at Awesemo Plus today. Let's go to San Francisco, -116 at New York Mets. Love seeing a 6.5 hung up on the board, which is pretty understandable when you look at which two pitchers are on the mound. Carlos Rodon, Chris Bassett. I mean, I just love Carlos Rodon. This guy I have been rostering since it was cool. Carlos Rodon, I'm in love with the stuff. He's going up against a Mets offense that, there's some potency, but there's definitely some Ks to be had here. I just believe in the arm more than anything. So far in the early going of this season, nothing's changed. 46.7% K percentage. That's going to come down. But I mean, let's be serious. He's phenomenal. 147 expected batting average. Are you as obsessed with getting to Carlos Rodon as I am every single time he's on the mound?
Yeah. And I was just doing some crunches for the main slate tonight, and he was showing up in just about 100% of my lineups. And honestly, I feel fine with that. I usually don't like the lock button player, especially in baseball, but this is one of those situations where we've been talking about it so far. I don't think we've liked one pitcher yet. And Jose Perez, Carlos Rodon is popping up just about everywhere. Yes, he's very expensive, $10,200. But if you're looking at the top pitcher stool, by far the best chance to be the top pitcher. Also, kind of up there as far as top value goes for someone that's $10,000 some dollars. picking up a lot of ownership though, around 70%. So while lock buttoning him isn't actually getting too far away from the rest of the field, but yeah, I'm definitely on Rodon. He's got 21 strikeouts. His first 2 starts, he mowed down a hot Cleveland team last time out, and a 35% K rate since last season. And the Mets, like we said, do have some pretty solid hitters, but they are missing some players due to, I believe, COVID protocols as well.
All right. Well, 2 pieces of housekeeping that we need to have here. This is for Tyler, because again, a lot of weird stuff was going on this slate. Number 1, you can take Baltimore, Oakland off of the sheet on the left because they moved their time for the game. It doesn't look like it's going to be on the DK main slate. Number 2, Cleveland postponed. So we don't have to think about that. Chicago White Sox, Cleveland, no Shane Bieber, sad times, sad face. That's all I have. So those are 2 pieces of housekeeping as we're going. I would have sent you a note, but also we're just all hanging out. This is a pretty chill vibe. Thought I would just, throw it out there that they're not Tyler's faults. They are in fact nobody's faults. There we are. Continuing on the other side of this one as well.
You passing San Francisco on the first round was your fault, and I let chat know that it was your fault.
Oh, so you're a dick. It's cool. Thanks. Chris Bassett, 31.8% K percentage, 3.01 expected ERA, 0.67 whip here early on. Once again, we have more sample size to accumulate, but he's exactly no slouch himself on the other side of this game. And I'm curious how much you're going to get to him. They're both very, very popular. I don't think we need to be worried about, I need to get the win in my lineup. No, Carlos Rodon and Chris Bassett, I'm going to have in a lot of lineups together. But is Chris Bassett somebody you still are going to get close to 50% of?
Yeah, I'll probably end up being more than 50% on Chris Bassett. It's just the lack of pitching options. I'm looking at the top pitchers tool, and there's 2 pitchers that kind of are above the entire field. It's Bassett and Rodon. And the one thing I love about Bassett is that he always pitches deep into games. Even early on in the season so far, he's been nearly at 100 pitches in each start, which I absolutely love. And especially over on FanDuel, that always helps going deep into the games because you can get that quality start bonus. So loving Bassett, loving Rodon. This is definitely a great game to go to for pitchers.
And Larry C, actual DFS question, the exact thing that we just talked about there. Would you play Bassett and Rodon in the same lineup? Absolutely. Nice. Screw the win be damned on a short slate basically here. We have 6 games now. Thought it was going to be 7, but we have 6 games, and it just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to fade the 2 best pitchers on the mound, bar none on a slate.
Totally agree.
Okay, cool. I like it when you agree with me. That's good. This is a good vibe we have going. We're going to go to, Cleveland. Why did Cleveland's lineup just come out?
Yeah, I saw that. I was kind of confused too.
What is happening today? This is weird. I'm literally looking at where it says postponed Cleveland on another place. Huh. Was that yesterday and it just hasn't updated? That would be weird.
Let me check.
Double check for me. Because they just came out with their lineup.
The official Guardians Twitter page 6 minutes ago. Oh, never mind. That's their minor league affiliate. Never mind.
What in the absolute world? All right, Tyler, take off postponed on Cleveland. Again, this is not my fault. I'm literally looking where it says on a different site.
I added question marks to it.
Just remove the whole thing. We're going to talk about it. We're just going to talk about it because it's on the early slate. It's on the early slate. We haven't gotten to that yet, but I just want to be prepared because Shane Bieber kind of important to talk about just slightly. Just a guy who's projected for over 50% rostership. No biggie. Cool. I'm keeping it all. Whatever. Carlos Rodon, Chris Bassett, we want to roster him a bunch. But if you're going to ever find leverage on a slate, these 2 teams, there's no way that anybody's going to be stacking them up. And that means 2.9% leverage going to San Francisco. The Mets, 1.2% leverage going to their direction. I'm much more inclined to stack up San Francisco as opposed to the Mets. I'll be playing 150 in the afternoon. No doubt about that. I will definitely have some San Francisco stacks going up against Chris Bassett, but I find it hard to want to go too crazy against Carlos Rodon. Anything stick out to you in terms of bats in this entire game?
No. If we had to talk about anybody, for me, it's going to be the Giants. But we're talking about like a 3.4 run total compared to a 3.2 run total. Like to find runs in this game is going to be very, very hard to do. I think there's way many better spots. But I mean, for me, maybe like 3 to 5% on the Giants just to get some massive leverage on the slate would not be the worst way to go. And Brandon Bell, while expensive, definitely looks like the best option.
I'm just double checking all of this stuff. I'm not crazy. I'm sending this to Mr. Well, Terry McBride's hanging out in the chat here too. I'll send this along because I'm not crazy. I'm looking at this thing and it is just tilting to no end that somebody would do this to me. Jock Peterson, I will have some one-offs of as well. This guy is just out of his mind right now, but he's always had the power. He's always had the pop. And now he's playing every day, going up against a righty. This is just something that I want to get to. I want to get to some Jock Peterson in my life. StatCast kind of likes him. 95.2% exit velocity now in the early going, 23 batted balls, only 4 barrels, but those are going very, very far and hard. 56.5% hard hit percentage. He's always been a guy who could just smash the ball. Going to be looking forward to rostering him all season long now in the heart of this order. Pretty much the one bat that I'm just going to always isolate there. Brandon Bell also confirmed very good at hitting baseballs. Anything else?
No, this is a pitcher's paradise game for me.
Yes, it really is. I'm trying to make something out of nothing. Tampa Bay, 4.5 implied runs going up against Chicago Cubs, 4.5. On the other side of this too, Drew Rasmussen, Marcus Stroman, talked about it before. Marcus Stroman, 10.1% top 2 pitcher percentage, only 3.6% ownership here. If I'm going to be getting off of Berrios, which is kind of what I really want to do if it's going to be a very popular Berrios, I got to find guys to get to. And Marcus Stroman, never been my DFS guy. Can't stand it. I feel like I've rostered him early on in this season, more than I would expect here for the Cubbies. He's a guy I'm going to be relying on today. Are you?
I definitely would rather get to Stroman than Berrios. I'm right there with you. As far as getting to a lot of Stroman, that's something I'm probably not going to do. I have right in my notes kind of exactly what you said, where I never play him for DFS, but for real life purposes, he's fine. He's got a 3.6 xFIP, 21.5% K rate, but we need strikeouts. And Berrios does offer us some more strikeout upside, but this is definitely a bit of a better matchup for Stroman. The weather does look pretty bleak in Chicago today, but the Rays do have a lot of pop, but at the same time, they will strike out quite a bit as well. So I'm with you. I'd rather go Team Stroman over Team Berrios today.
All right. Well, good. Good luck to both of us in that department. He doesn't strike out me, so it's problematic. But a decent enough real life pitcher that I think I'm willing to make that a thing. Drew Rasmussen on the other side of this game, I don't know if he can really go long enough. I mean, just 1% ownership, 7% top 2 pitcher percentage. I doubt I get to him here on this slate. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't broke 70 pitches in a game so far, 22% K rate pitcher. There's just very little upside in the Cubs lineup. I mean, some of these guys do have some decent pop here. I mean, it's not amazing, but Suzuki, obviously, it's nearly $6,000 these days, though. I think our last show, he was still in like the 3 to 4K range. So it's definitely caught on as far as the fantasy sites go. But I don't love the Cubs lineup, but I also don't like the Rays pitcher. So it's kind of like a stalemate there for me.
Yep. Stalemate action. It's fascinating here. Drew Rasmussen, don't want to go completely crazy against him here on the other side, but I digress. We got to have some interest in some other bats that aren't just Minnesota and Kansas City, that aren't just Seattle here in this spot. So I've got a number of ways that I might get to some bats in this one. Curious what you think of the Tampa Bay side going up against Stroman. I like Stroman. We're going to roster him, but Brandon Lau, I'm going to be overweight every single day and twice on Sunday because, maybe they're going to have a doubleheader. That was kind of a bad joke, but Manuel Margot, Randy Arozarena, Yandy Diaz, number of batters that are all right to get to. Nothing sticking out like crazy, but Wander Franco, just an absolute beast. 10.3% rostership, 5,400. Give me all of that you got. What sticks out to you from Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I definitely love the top half here. I'm right there with you. I didn't know you're a big Brandon Lau fan as well.
Gigantic.
Oh, same. He's one of my favorite players.
He's just so good. And if you can hit in the trop, you're pretty much upgrading yourself everywhere else you go, and people don't really do anything about it.
Right. But yeah, the top half of this order, it's pretty expensive. I mean, we're talking $5,600 for Lau. Franco's at $5,400, $5,100 for Randy Arozarena. Gets a little bit cheaper after that, so you're definitely gonna have to find some value to make that work. But if you are looking for some value, the next game we're talking about Minnesota, these guys are basically free, so you can just about make any stack you want work, even if you do go with some expensive pitching.
And from the other side, Suzuki confirmed pretty good at hitting hard baseballs in the early going of his major league career. sticking out to me outside of Suzuki, I mean, we're 669 expected slugging. Contreras, you can always get to as a catcher hitting option. Jonathan VR has been hitting up pretty darn high in the order. Patrick Wisdom has started to show some pop here once again. That was never really in doubt. Lots of guys to still get to on the Cubs side, although Rasmussen's been pretty decent, not the pen you necessarily want to go out of your way to pick on. How do you feel about the Cubs?
It's like that weird spot where it's like, I don't really want to pick on the Rays here. And I also don't love the Cubs, but at the same time, I could see the Cubs having a halfway decent game. I mean, for me, it's obviously Suzuki, Contreras. Those are like your two main bats in this lineup. But bottom of the order does have some power with Patrick Wisdom. Frank Schwindel also has some pop. Not my favorite lineup for sure. Not going to be super high as far as my stacks go. If I'm looking at the top stacks tool, I believe they are grabbing some ownership. I believe I'm sorry. I'm looking at the top stack percentage. So they are getting some positive leverage, actually. I believe the second best leverage on the slate. So
I mean, part of it is just the weather. You get wind blowing out in Wrigley, and that's going to be something that takes precedent. It's still 50 degrees there, so still not the warmest weather, but looks like wind's blowing out 15 to 20 out to left. That's going to cure a lot of problems in terms of like worrying about upside. If it's really getting pronounced out there, you've got a number of guys who have enough pop to get one out of there and on the Cubs side.
Right. And that leverage they do have on the top stacks tool is pretty intriguing to me. Both them and the Rays actually in this game have the best leverage on the slate as of right now. So it's definitely a really good spot to go for in tournaments.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens as we get closer to lock. Find it hard to believe people who play DFS, who have been playing MLB DFS forever, don't recognize when the wind's blowing out in Wrigley. That'd be a pretty silly thing, but two decent enough pitchers who limit the damage on the mound. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, as you said, Rasmussen, I don't see him going over 70 pitches. I don't see, Stroman being the biggest K upside guy. It's basically, I'm playing Stroman for ownership purposes.
Right. Same way. It just doesn't feel great at all, but it also doesn't feel very good playing a very high on Barrios in a very tough matchup versus.
It doesn't feel good. You are very correct about that. But yeah, Tampa Bay and Chicago, both offenses, I think you can definitely stack up with the wind blowing out and moving on with your day. But oh boy, best of luck to us with our pivot off of Stroman. I can already tell you, not going to go well. You know what does go well? Playing over at Prize Picks. Daily prop-based contests. Use promo code Awesemo. You'll get $100 first match deposit bonus right now. It's really fun to play over there. I've enjoyed my time. I think you will too, because you get 2, 3, 4, or 5 player lineups. You can net up to 10x your entry fee. Plus, there's cross-sport abilities where you can play every single sport you could possibly imagine. They've got CSGO, League of Legends, esports going along with NASCAR and finishing positions, and so many different things that have been really fun to add to the card for me. That kind of is an addition to my DFS portfolio. Check out prizepicks.com. Download the app over at the Apple Store or Google Play Store. But I'm telling you right now, it is just an absolute blast to be checking out their products. Super clean, super easy to navigate the main site. And you don't have to think about like minus 110, minus 150. You basically are just trying to hit winners. You're picking overs, you're picking unders, you're moving on with your day. It's so easy, so fast, and so capable of putting great winning lineups together, especially with the help of oddshopper.com and all of our great projections, which you'll get completely free just by signing up over at Prize Picks. You'll get a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All of the things I talked about for the weekly pass, which is what, $29.95 right now. You're getting a free month. That's over a $100 value just by checking out our friends Prize Picks. So thank you so much to them for their sponsorship here of the Live Before Lock. Well, I guess this is the strategy show, but it's Live Before Lock-ish, just in terms of looking at this slate that we've got coming up in the early section. But thank you so much to them. Looking forward to playing their product all year long. All right, my friend, we keep it on rolling to, what do I have next? This is going so well. Minnesota, minus 121 at Kansas City. 9 total runs we've got in this one. And Chris Paddock, the newly acquired Chris Paddock, on the mound going up against Daniel Lynch. Daniel Lynch, 28% K percentage, 6.23 expected ERA, 2 whip in the early going of this season. And Chris Paddock, not a whole heck of a lot better. He's never really missed bats. Don't know why he was so highly touted, but my God, if we're not going to play Jose Barrios, it opens up the entire board to us. Chris Paddock's getting a little bit more attention considering he's 5,900 on the DraftKings slate. Drew, you've got on the other side of this one, Daniel Lynch, He's got a little bit of positive leverage. I don't know how I feel about taking these shots, but I think you have to do it in 150. Which pitcher do you like more in this spot?
Tough question, because I definitely like both offenses on this slate. I guess if I had to go with any, it would be Chris Paddock. As gross as that sounds, but I really like the Minnesota stack today. And I know Paddock got off to a very tough start versus the Dodgers. I believe he gave up 3 runs in the first inning, but he did calm down, ended the day with 3 runs. And if you're looking back since last season, he still had a 3.85 xFIP despite his ERA being above 5. The downsides are, though, I think they're 21% K rate. He doesn't really walk many guys, so he's always going to give you pitches to hit. You did mention he doesn't miss many bats, which is certainly true. It's just the KC lineup is not amazing. Yes, there are some guys that do have some decent pop, like Salvador Perez. I believe he went double donger last night, if I remember correctly. And then Bobby Witt with Merrifield. It's not a terrible lineup, and they don't really strike out a ton. But if I had to get to one, it's going to be Chris Paddock. But I do not feel good saying that.
I'm probably going to go to the other side, where I think Daniel Lynch is a guy that, not that I'm going to go crazy with. I don't know if there's a pitcher I want to go crazy with, because we have such great top tier options on the slate that are just so hard for me to get away from. I think there are offenses, both of them in this game, where there's just too cheap of bats. And it's going to be very clear cut that people play Minnesota and KC and they play the top pitchers. That's basically the lineup construction you're going to have to fade on this slate. And I don't feel good about fading it. I'll definitely have shares of this side of it, but you got to find ways to get away from it. And I think the guy who I would expect to be more successful long-term is going to be Daniel Lynch. Just Chris Paddock is so difficult for me to analyze. And I'm just talking about from a DFS perspective with Daniel Lynch in the early going, 28% K percentage this season, giving up crazy hard contact, 64.7% hard hit percentage with a crazy launch angle. But going back to last season, 17.7% K percentage is not exactly good. 6.31 expected ERA, was bottom 3% of the entire league. But it's more of just looking at the Minnesota Twins lineup as opposed to KC here at the top end. It's really a tough spot to really know what the field's going to be doing, but I'm expecting based on our tools right now that Minnesota is going to be the more popular side. Negative 11.9% leverage. We're looking at 23.5% ownership share. That makes KC, with just their 10.4% ownership share, more intriguing for me to get to offensively. So maybe it's just a hope and a wish that Daniel Lynch can keep it together here in this spot. But I think I'm more inclined to go his direction, which is just a ridiculous thing to say out loud.
Yeah, the one thing I will say for Daniel Lynch, even though he gave up, I believe, 6 runs in his last start versus St. Louis, they're a very good team versus lefties. And he still had 7 strikeouts in that game, which was pretty, at least nice to see from him. The reason why so many people are going to get to the Twins is because you're probably spending up for Chris Bassett and Carlos Rodon tonight. So if you're going to try to get an expensive stack from that Toronto and Boston game, you have to find some value somewhere. And there's only 2 right now in the projected lineup for Minnesota. There's only 2 guys above like $2,800, and that's Carlos Correa at $4,900 and Jorge Polanco at $4K. Everybody else is absolutely free. So that would be the reason why they're getting a ton of ownership. And they're looking at the top stacks too. I believe they have the worst leverage score on the entire slate. So it definitely looks like they're going to be pretty overowned. And I can get behind some Daniel Lynch just because of that to combat the chalk, because it's not like the Twins chalk is ever something that should be too exciting for this season.
Oh yeah, it's very uncomfortable. This is trust me, I've seen this. What was fun was 2 or 3 years ago when you had the Bomba squad and you had Nelson Cruz up at 6K and Buxton at 5,800 and all these guys that nobody could get up to. CJ Crone was over 5K. It's the exact inverse of what we're looking at now. It's just value du jour. And I don't know why. I would assume just because, they're not setting major league records for home runs here with the lineup that they're rolling out every single day. But surely the value is there. I don't think there's any question. I just talked about their value percentage, 36.6%. So pretty hard to fade. I'm not going to full fade it on just a 7-game or now 6-game slate, but I'm going to be substantially lower than the field is and might find some unique ways to stack them up. If you had to play one bat here, well, actually, that's a stupid question. You're going to play a lot of these bats just because you have to a certain extent, but I'm not going to be full fading by any means. Let's talk KC. Sal Perez hits baseballs hard and far. I like him. See, that's the analysis I give. But then is there anything else that really sticks out to you besides Bobby Witt and him, who just seem to be popular at every single slate?
Yeah, those are definitely my two favorite to get to. Not a lot of people love to play Nicky Lopez, which I totally understand. Plus, he's close to $4,000. Obviously, not a lot of pop in his bat. Whit Merrifield always seems a bit expensive. He's up to $5,400. Kind of a lot for a guy that we don't really expect to get a lot of home runs this season. I know there's at least some speed with a little bit of pop combination there, but kind of overly expensive. I'll be living in that Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez range, even just as far as like a mini stack goes. I don't think that's too bad in this slate for a two-man. Benintendi batting fifth. You have the lefty and righty matchup versus Chris Paddock here. Like top to bottom, I can make a case for a lot of these guys. Adalberto Mondesi, I think we all in the fantasy community have always liked him with his speed upside. But for me, the top half of the order is what I get to, but 3 and 4 look the best.
All right, let's head to the last game here on the DraftKings slate. There's 4 others that exist over on FanDuel. If we have time at the very end, if we're not going to be, we might be here for an hour and a half. We can talk about the 4 games that open up that FanDuel slate. We've got Baltimore, Oakland, LA, Houston, New York, Detroit, St. Louis, Miami that all lead into the main slate there. But we got to go back and we got to talk about the 5-game early slate. I know a lot of you guys are going to be playing that. I'm going to be playing that as well. We will chat about that. We shall get right to it. But last game on this main slate for the DK spot, Texas plus 137 at Seattle. 8 total runs that I'm looking at here. And on the mound, where did they just go? Here you go. Dane Dunning. Talked about him as a guy that I might take some shots on as opposed to going to more Barrios. Logan Gilbert, absolute stud. This guy is going to be so good. Early on here, 27.5% K percentage this season, a 1.87 expected ERA, 0.8 whip. Maybe not that good of numbers, but it's going to be something close to that all season long. I don't know. I feel pretty confident that he's a better bet than Garrett Cole right now to win the AL Cy Young. But how do you feel about pitchers on the mound in this one?
It's interesting because I think you can make a case for both. I do like that price point on Dane Dunning. I've liked him ever since he came up to the major leagues. I wouldn't say he's really surpassed my expectations by any means. He's only sitting at a 22% K rate, but he does show some upside here and there. And I wouldn't say this matchup versus Seattle is anything incredibly tough, although it's definitely not the easiest spot here. You have Adam Frazier, Ty France, Jesse Winker. All guys are kind of pesky as far as strikeouts go. And Jesse Winker obviously has a ton of pop versus right-handed pitching. You have Eugenio Suarez, who I know went deep last night, but he can always be a free strikeout or two. But Logan Gilbert, I just feel like he's a bit expensive. I know you said he's going to be good, which I totally agree. I believe he's only 24, and there's going to be upside for years to come. But when you compare him to guys like Chris Bassett and Carlos Rodon at similar price points, I'm having a pretty hard time getting to Gilbert. But at the same time, he's going to have a lot lower ownership, which makes him a pretty decent pivot as well.
Look at that. Yeah, he's pretty good, but it's compared to the other two. I'm with you. He doesn't stand out as much, but the ownership is reduced. That makes it intriguing to get to at least a little bit of him for sure. Going up against Texas is still a positive, even though there are better bats that exist in that lineup. There are lots of Ks to be had. So I think that there's really no question about it. What are you going to do here, though, with my boy Dane Dunning? I'm not going to let you off the hook here. Dane Dunning, you have to recommend the same way that I'm recommending Dane Dunning today. Because you have to be a sicko. That's part of being on these shows with me, is that you have to take all my takes, Dane Dunning, and you have to say why they're so superb and spectacular. I'm just kidding. Dane Dunning sucks, but I'm going to roster him anyway. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, he's got the same percentage to be a top 2 pitcher as Marcus Stroman today over on the top pitchers tool, and he's about $1,000 cheaper. So I'd almost maybe rather get to more Dane Dunning today than Marcus Stroman, especially with the wind blowing out.
All right, that's fair. Look at that. It's Dane Dunning. He's not very good. Let's talk offenses here. Logan Gilbert, I don't really know what I want to do up against him. Probably nothing, but there's going to be a little bit of positive leverage go there. 5.7% top stack potential is higher than I would expect. Yes, that's third worst on the slate, but there's positive leverage to be had there. I think over a long haul, you're better off taking some shots on some of these offenses, whether it's Oakland and Tampa Bay earlier, or, we've even seen some wonky slates where, you get that 1 or 2% San Diego Padres stack through and you're set to go. Obviously, you have individual hitters that'll stand out every single day from lineups like this, but anything in particular stick out to you from Texas?
Just a couple of lefties here: Corey Seager, Nate Lowe, Brad Miller. I think they're fine, but if you are going to stack them up, do not leave Marcus Semien off, because it's one of the best bats in the entire offense. So for me, the top half looks fine. It gets a little bit worse as we go down with Adolis Garcia, Willie Calhoun, Jonah Heim, Cole Calhoun, Nick Solak. But for me, Corey, if I had to pick two of these guys, Corey Seager and Brad Miller would be the ones I get to the most.
All right. And from the Seattle side, going up against Dunning, yeah, Dane Dunning's not good enough for me not to be stacking up against him a little bit here. And it looks like they're about appropriately owned. But on this slate, when you're getting away from Minnesota the way that I plan to, I can kind of play the rest of the board and be all right with it. I'm looking at specifically Julio Rodriguez. So nice. He almost ended up winning me a tournament last night out of the middle of nowhere, ends up getting walked and then steals second in a spot where he probably didn't even need to. But oh my God, was I here for it. He's going to be very good long-term, but there's other hitters that I think I would prefer to get to here in this lineup. Who are your favorites to get to from Seattle?
Yes, just looking at some of the splits here versus righties. Top half of this order doesn't really strike out too much besides Suarez. I mean, Adam Frazier only strikes out 8.5% of the time versus righties. Ty France, 16.4%. Jesse Winker, 12.5%. Jesse Winker is definitely my favorite play here. Just absolutely crushes right-handed pitching. 274 ISO, 170 WRC plus, 608 slugging. And Eugenio Suarez, as ugly as it sounds, like he has a 28% K rate versus righties, but he still had over a 250 ISO versus right-handed pitching this season. So I'll take the beefy part of that order with Winker and Suarez going home run hunting.
All right, everybody, smash that like button. Chris is doing a phenomenal job breaking down everything you need to for all these slates that are going on everywhere that have games getting moved to different times on DraftKings, fake postponements, weird stuff happening. But you know what? He is the constant on this show. Relax and chill. Oh, here we go. Rays and Cubs will start at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday due to forecasted inclement weather. Holy crap. Does that mean we're going to lose them on the DraftKings slate?
I would think so. I don't think they can move it forward.
They're just toying with me today. This is just madness. So Tyler, that's cool. Be on the lookout. If you guys are listening to this after the fact in podcast form or anything else, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time now for that Tampa Bay and Cubs game in Wrigley. Sounds like they've got some weather coming in. They moved up the time. I got to imagine DraftKings is now going to be a 5-game main slate. I think they'll probably keep it for the FanDuel slate just because it starts at 6:05 Eastern time, if I'm looking at that correctly.
I believe it does start earlier. Let me check.
All right, here's what we're going to do.
What time did that game get moved to? The Tampa Bay
6:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm looking at the FanDuel slate. Yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be close. It might just get removed altogether. So wonky. Yeah, 3:07 is when that slate's supposed to start. It was going to start at 3:40, but it looks like FanDuel added the Baltimore-Oakland game to that early session, even though it's not there on Cruncher. It is there on the main FanDuel site. I'm going to go with the main FanDuel site as Baltimore-Oakland is now a part of that slate. What in the world?
Trying to make our jobs harder.
Oh, Chris Pinelli, you're the man, though. You're a constant. We're gonna do this. We're gonna at the very end cover those 4 games if you have time. Do you have time to hang around?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That sounded like, oh, my girlfriend might be upset about it. But that's okay. You're not married, are you?
No, I do have a girlfriend though.
Oh, okay, that's lovely.
Oh,
She's probably a nice lady.
Yeah.
My wife's nice sometimes. Generally, as long as I put my dishes in the dishwasher, that's when it goes well for me. Pittsburgh plus 214. Let's talk the early slate for everybody that wants the information. 214 plus 214 at Milwaukee. 8 total runs here in this one. What a great pitching situation to start off with. Generally, if it were last year, Brandon Woodruff, not the best start to the season. 9.8% K percentage, 1.5 whip, 4.75 expected ERA. These are all things I'm willing to overlook when it's Brandon Woodruff we're talking about here. I expect him and this entire pitching staff to be just fine going forward. I'm looking at him compared to some of the other guys. I feel pretty confident that this is just a good pitcher long-term. He's the guy, 43.3% top 2 pitcher percentage, best on the slate. How much are you going to get to him here early on?
I'm going to have a lot. I mean, if you're looking at just about every metric, he is definitely the best pitcher to use. I'm looking at ownership right now. I mean, you can obviously pivot away from him to Shane Bieber if you want. I know you said the game got postponed, but I think I've checked some things. I think we're good to go on that part. So you can definitely get the Bieber. If you don't want to get the Woodruff, you can obviously play both together. He's $1,000 cheaper than Shane Bieber. And plus this matchup versus Pittsburgh's a lot easier than it is for Bieber going up against Chicago White Sox. I mean, last I looked, I believe the Pirates had like a 2.9 implied team total. I'm not sure if that went up a little bit, but it's definitely the lowest on the slate. 29% K rate for Brandon Woodruff since last season, 3.1 xFIP. A pretty bad Pittsburgh lineup. They can be kind of pesky here and there, but I see no reason not to like Woodruff, and I'd say he's got some pretty good win equity as well.
Sure does. And looking at the DraftKings slate, I mean, obviously, you don't have to worry about Woodruff here on FanDuel. They have a 2-game early and then another early. The slates are all over the place here today, that is for sure. But it's a 3-game early slate, and they are not a part of it. Sad times. So on DraftKings, that is definitely the guy to get to in that early session of games. Woodruff is just a freak. But Mitch Keller on the other side of this one, Milwaukee always feels like an offense that's going to be a little bit over-owned on just about any slate that they show up on. They have the right combination of upside, power, but then they also have some value that they can kind of mix in on the back half of the lineup. So always going to be a team that feels uncomfortable to fade for me, but I feel like I'm going to have to more times than not. But Mitch Keller is a pretty darn good matchup here in this spot.
Yeah, I played the Brewers, I believe, the past couple of days, especially over on FanDuel because they've been really cheap over there. Like you can get Tellez, Wong all in the lower 2K range, it feels like every single night. And they're in a pretty good spot here, like you just said. We have around a 5 implied team total. Mitch Keller is obviously not a very good pitcher. Looking back to since last season, 4.86 xFIP, a sub 20% K rate. And he's yet to see the 5th inning so far this year. So I don't mind going right back to the Brewers bats on this one.
Yeah, I know. I kind of have to.
Yeah.
I have to have some of them on this slate, especially guys like Rowdy Tellez, 3K, 3K batting cleanup here in this spot. I'm not playing cash today. I know you're playing cash. Are you playing DK cash?
Yeah, I do here and there. I do like the FanDuel side a little bit more though.
I know you do. That's why I was saying that. I've done one show and I'm acting as though we've done 50,000 of them together and that I know the ins and outs of your process. But if I were playing DK cash, looking at first base, pretty sure Rowdy Tellez, strong candidate to show up there at the top end, depending on what you want to do. Matt Olson, 3,600 feels way, way, way too cheap. I love both of those guys. Going to be hard to pick one over the other. I think I'll just have shares of both in tournaments. That's me. But looking at the Pittsburgh side, this is a team. I know our friend T McBee there in the chat. I know he's trolling me, but I think he likes me for the most part. He's been getting to a little bit above expectation. They are completely unowned against Brandon Woodruff, completely. And I don't think they should be. I think Brandon Woodruff, there's going to be some short-term problems here for Brandon Woodruff as he's getting adjusted to, everybody's getting back into the swing of things with baseball. No spring training, guys are starting to ramp up the velo. Maybe it just takes them a little bit longer to get going. And there's enough pop at the top of this order. Brian Reynolds is a monster. Brian Hayes batting third. They're not cheap. Daniel Vogelbach, revenge Dan Vogelbach spot leading off 4,400. I might get to these Pirates bats quite a bit. How about you?
I might just be a chalk donkey. I really like Brandon Woodruff today. The Pirates, I wish they were cheaper. Like if the top half of the order was not like above 5K for Reynolds and Brian Hayes. I know they're fine hitters, obviously, and Daniel Vogelbach's got some power up top. It just feels like I'm paying a premium when I shouldn't be paying a premium. This should be a cheap spot going up against a tough pitcher at lower ownership. We're playing kind of a lot for that top half of the order and not a very good spot. So, I mean, if we're looking at the top stacks tool, I believe, yeah, they're at the very bottom, but they do have positive leverage because they're coming in at 1% ownership, 4% optimal. So I don't hate it. I'm more of a chalk donkey here. You're probably a little bit different than me, but I could understand the case for Pittsburgh, but it does not feel good at all.
No, it doesn't feel good at all. But if they were cheaper, they would actually have some ownership maybe going their direction. So I'm okay just when you're trying to isolate a team that in the top stacks tool, yeah, they're the lowest there at 4.3%. But basically 1 out of every 25 times on a slate, you're getting a team that's 1% and you have the nuts. So I'm all right getting there. We've got people in chat talking about dressing me up as a piñata. People think I'm high on crack or crocodile. What is that? I don't even know what crocodile is.
I think it's like a Florida drug. Like eat your skin or something.
It would be a Florida drug recommended in YouTube chat. It's 8:52 a.m. out here. I'm trying to keep everything organized because I am a very organized individual, trying to give you guys all the information, and MLB and other places are just making it impossible to be as such. But you know what? We have righted the ship. Let's go to the Milwaukee side. Give me your favorite place from Milwaukee.
Yeah, Rowdy Tellez. I mean, he's cheap everywhere. Batting cleanup, at least. Yeah, that's a confirmed lineup now. So yeah, I'm all about Rowdy Tellez here. Love that. Christian Yelich had the grand slam 2 nights ago. Willie Adames is the guy that I feel like I play just about every single night. Colton Wong. You can make a case for just about everybody here in the bottom 3 in Keston here at Jace Peterson, Tyrone Taylor. maybe you could kind of leave them off, but the top 6 all have some decent pop, and Mitch Keller's obviously a guy that can give it up to either writers or lefties, so it don't really matter what side of the plate you're on. I think they're all fantastic plays, but favorite's going to be right to West.
All right. What are we talking about? 20 mile an hour in from right? It's a roof. It's a dome, right?
Right. Yeah, we're good.
Milwaukee. Okay, cool. Well, let's keep it moving then. Let's do the thing. Chicago White Sox, 3.7 implied runs going up against the Cleveland Guardians, 4.3 implied runs here. Dallas Keuchel, Shane Bieber, the game that was pseudo canceled, even though I swear to God, looking at it right now, still says it on this one place that I get my information from. This is just absurd that it even says that. So we're just going forward as though they're playing because they are. It's 51 degrees. I see no issue that they're not playing here in this spot. So I apologize if I threw anybody astray there in that regard. Looks just fine to me. Slight wind blowing out 5 to 7 miles an hour going out to left, but 50-degree weather. Shane Bieber, really good at pitching. Looking at the DraftKings slate, this has to be a guy that we consider now.
Oh, yeah. I might be a little bit biased here. Shane Bieber is my favorite pitcher, but I mean, 303 xFIP, 32% K rate. I see no reason not to like Bieber. The matchup versus the White Sox, sure, it's a little tough, but it's also the same can be said for the White Sox, where it's a tough matchup versus Bieber today.
All right. Again, do we have them in the top pitching tool? DK has no. Our top pitching tool doesn't have Bieber or Keuchel in it anymore.
It did have Tristan McKenzie just a little bit ago, and then it switched over to Bieber in some spots. So I think that's probably why.
Okay. That's good. We'll let that update here because Shane Bieber, this is a guy that is just very, very historically good at pitching. 2 years ago, won a Cy Young. Generally, they don't just hand those out for free. 72 and 79 pitches. I'd like to see the pitch count go up a little bit more, but against this White Sox team, yes, there's immense power, but there are definitely some strikeouts to be had. So I think I'm all right getting to that direction. Keuchel, not ever the most intriguing DFS guy, but ground ball pitcher. We'll see if he can continue to limit damage. And I think against this Cleveland team, that's something that can be done. But let's talk bats. That's what we really want to talk here in terms of the Cleveland side, maybe the White Sox side. A little tough to get to in terms of going up against Shane Bieber. But anything stick out to you specifically with this lineup that has Miles Straw leading off, Ernie Clement batting second, Josh Naylor? I mean, there's a bunch of creative players around Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes. Ahmed Rosario, if you want to put him in that bucket, but probably not for me. This lineup is ridiculous going up against Keuchel. What are you planning to do with it?
Hey, you might need to slow the hate down on Miles Straw, by the way. I do.
Oh, I'm fast. Look at me run. This is like, not really.
Give me that stolen base upside here and there.
I know he does, but Miles Straw, stop it. Stop it. Miles Straw's family is surprised that he's leading off in a major league park.
I'm sure they're proud of him, though. He's been doing
I'm sure they are.
But if you're looking for some... What?
I'm sure they're proud of him. It was so good natured and you meant it. You meant every word.
I support my Guardians. All right. But Ernie Clement, I mean, if you're looking for a dirt cheap option, I'll be honest, Ernie Clement, I'm sure most people have no idea who he is. And I barely know who he is, but he's 2K batting second versus Dallas Keuchel. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But Jose Ramirez is obviously the top option here. He's been playing very, very well ever since he got paid. Franmil Reyes, obviously a ton of pop there. Ahmed Rosario, $4,100. Bottom half of the order, definitely a lot of creative players. Top half, not terrible. And Ernie Clement does make it kind of viable to get some expensive pitching today. So if you want to go Woodruff, you want to go Shane Bieber, you throw in a Clement at 2K and kind of stack up the Indians, you can kind of go wherever you want and feel pretty good about it.
And looking at the top stack percentage for the White Sox spot, 6.4% top stack percentage, just a 2.7% ownership share. So this is a team in 150 that I'm going to get to a little bit more than you would expect. I think Yasmani Grandal against anybody is somebody that I want to get to, batting fifth. Catcher spot, yeah, he's expensive, 4,400. Yes, we have expensive catcher options, but I think that there's enough leverage going to somebody like that. Looking at the top end of this lineup, there's no discount that you're getting. You're not getting the Atlanta Braves discount rostering these White Sox bats, but who would be your favorite guys to get to?
Some of the lefties do look pretty good, like Gavin Sheets, Yasmani Grandal, switch hitter. I mean, that's kind of it as far as the lefties go. Tim Anderson at the top, Luis Robert. The thing is, though, you're not getting any discount here, and you're going up against an elite level pitcher that's going to strike out around 30% of these bats that he sees. So it's like, how do I really get to too many White Sox? If you're looking at the top values as far as the top stacks tool goes, I believe the White Sox are at the Yeah, very bottom of the board. They do have some positive leverage, but man, it is really tough to get to really any of these guys besides maybe Sheets batting cleanup. It's a lefty and righty matchup at only $3,400.
Yeah, he's cheap. That's the nicest thing I can say about him. All right. Anything else from this game for you?
No, I'm just mainly going to be using Shane Bieber here and some of these cheap Indians besides Ramirez suspended.
All right. Do we want to do Hall of Fame here, Tyler? Is it Hall of Fame season? Standing in the Hall of Fame. No, you didn't like that? Isn't that Imagine Dragons? Don't kids like Imagine Dragons? You're a kid.
I don't think that's Imagine Dragons. Is it?
Oh, it's not?
I don't think so.
No, but I just we had a terrible soundtrack of that in high school whenever we used to warm up for football games, and I kind of had a PTSD moment right there. I kind of went into shock.
Standing at the Hall of Fame.
Stop it.
We're going to do that. Awesemo Hall of Fame time. Guys, you know what to do. You tweet at Awesemo, HOF on Twitter with your wins. You place in the top 3 of any contest with 5K plus contestants. Doesn't matter if it's the dime that's top of the line. It doesn't matter if it's the quarter jukebox. Doesn't matter if it's the $1. Doesn't matter if it's the $15. Doesn't matter if it's the $5.55. If you play in something, well, that won't have over 5K contestants, so that actually wouldn't qualify somehow. But you place in the top 3 with over 5,000 contestants, and you will get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That can only be used once per calendar year, so check that out. But we've just had ridiculous amount of screenshots coming in for multiple sports, multiple slates. Pretty incredible stuff to see everybody's wins. Love seeing it. Look at this right off the bat. MT, W there in that department. Love seeing these. And I hope you guys have been tweeting out getting these free months while you're going along. Look at this. 40K for Rich Green 4. Ricky Bobby said, if you're not first, you're last. You're familiar with that, Chris, in the NASCAR streets. Talladega Nights, just one of the best movies that could ever be.
We got Talladega this weekend.
Talladega is this weekend?
Yep.
There's a cougar in the car. What is the other one? I just missed somebody as they came in here. But yeah, Rich Green right off the bat. That is so good. This one, I can't read what that says, but United Unreliable Expert. There you go. Won the Minimax 2 nights in a row. That's pretty good. I_just_guest. Congratulations to you. Back-to-back W's. Appreciate you guys for tweeting these out here as well. Chad, only my 5th day on Underdog Fantasy. It took 2nd in their main NBA contest. Thanks again to all of the people. No, thank you to you for being you, for always showing up in chat. I've always seen you there. You're always a willing participant in the chat department. Congratulations on the W. Guys, you can all join the Hall of Fame just by continuing to follow all the tools and content we have here at Awesemo, tweeting your wins. Love seeing it. Eric, too high already. Lay off the devil's lettuce. What are you talking about? Just trying to get things done. Chad, another fantastic NASCAR weekend for a guy who doesn't really even understand the sport yet. That's like me, Chris. It's like me. It's almost like you're good at what you do.
I try.
Just says I tried. That's the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Appreciate you guys. Chris is just so lighthearted and endearing, which, evens me out a little bit. Man, we're back to it. We got how many games? 3 left to go here for the early slate. Let's do it. And then, you know what? I'll see if I can type up some stuff here. Tyler, I apologize. I might make you do it. FanDuel. Now we're going to have 4 games that are earlier there on the front end for that 10 gamer. They moved the Oakland one up. So we should probably cover that. We should probably cover the other ones. Again, this is not my fault. I didn't do this, Tyler. I didn't do this. This is just, it's not the slate we wanted. It's the slate we've been given. Might have to play over there more now too with more games, but I digress. 3 to go here. Let's talk Philadelphia and Colorado. Cruz Field game on a 5-gamer. That's going to always do some wonky things to the old ownership department. No doubt about that. 15.2% top stack percentage going up against Philadelphia, 21.9%. These are your 2 most popular offenses, bar none, but 2 decent enough pitchers on the mound. Zach Eflin, Herman Marquez. Let's start there. Do you have any interest in living dangerously rostering one of these 2 pitchers?
I think if I was going to do one, it might end up being Marquez, because I always don't mind playing him in Coors Field just because he's always going to be a little bit under-owned. Now, the problem is I've been playing the Phillies just about every single night. Well, I think it's only been they've been in Coors, 2 nights now. So it's maybe I'm pushing that over.
They've been there for 2 weeks.
That's what it feels like. But the first night went terrible. I think they scored 1 run, and that was at the very end of the game. Last night got better. Kyle Schwarber got his first hit, it feels like, since 2 weeks ago. But German Marquez is a decent real-life pitcher. I mean, the K rate's still not super high. He's sitting at 23% since last season at 3.61 xFIP. But, man, the Phillies have a lot of name value, a lot of good bats in that lineup, but they have not been hitting well whatsoever. So if you can catch them on another bad day, Marquez is in a decent spot at somewhat lower ownership. We're talking 10% ownership and a 26% chance to be a top, or 21% chance, 1% ownership, I'm sorry, and a 21% chance to be a top 2 pitcher. So you're getting some pretty good leverage there.
Yeah, he's got to be a guy you consider. I feel like I roster him above expectation every single time he's on the mound here in Coors. One of the main components of being a decent enough pitcher here, just not letting the ball get in the air. And he's a guy that you see some of the ground ball rates. He also limits some of the barrel percentage early on here for sure. Only 1 barrel against him here now in 2 outings. That's good, not sustainable, but that's really, really good. Like seeing it. German Marquez, I'm going to have a little bit too much of. I can already feel it. I feel it coming, babe. Let's talk offenses because that's really what we need to do here in this spot. Already talked about how popular they are. Help me with the Philadelphia side here. I know you're playing your cash games. How many bats are you going to plan on getting to from the Philly side?
Ooh, I might get to a couple. The problem is they're just so expensive. And it's not like the past couple of days where they're going up against Kyle Freeland or Chad Kulik. Those are just 2 below average pitchers. I know Kyle Freeland just got like $60 million. I'm not sure if he deserved that, but no. Definitely the tougher spot here versus German Marquez. So like past couple of nights, these guys have been cash locks. I think they're still fine, obviously, but I'm not going to force any of them in. I mean, top options are going to be Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. You get the lefty and righty matchups there versus Marquez. But outside of that, I'm not going to force anybody in, but if they find my lineups, that's fine.
All right, let's go to the Colorado side then, because they seem like the side just in the top stacks tool that is going about appropriately owned. Philadelphia, again, they're under-owned just because it's so hard to land on them with the pitching options that you'd have to roster to full stack up Philadelphia on DraftKings, but 0.6% negative leverage is still pretty insignificant, I would say, compared to the Milwaukee, San Diego side that are just crazy popular here. Philadelphia, we talked about them. Colorado, are there specific hitters that you've got isolated for cash? And also, how do you plan to stack them up to get different?
Yeah, I actually don't mind about the entire Rockies lineup. We have a similar team total compared to the Phillies, but you're also getting a pretty massive discount. Like Charlie Blackmon leading off, only $4,100. I know he's an old man now and he's pretty washed, but he did go deep a couple nights ago, had a decent game last night, fantasy points wise. You have Randall Grichuk, Chris Bryant, CJ Cron. He's like on absolute fire right now. I'm just hitting home runs. It feels like just about every single day. I know it's a righty on righty match. I prefer him versus lefties, but I'll take the power upside batting cleanup. Entire lineup looks pretty good. Sam Hilliard, if you're looking for a cheap option to throw in cash just to get some Coors exposure, he's got some pop versus righties, and I would say he might be one of the better values as far as the outfitters go in this slate.
There's nobody that I'm more upset with in baseball than CJ Cron. Nobody. Because last year I was like, oh, I'm going to play in all these expensive season-long MLB leagues. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. You know, I have the tools and the content to help me do it. And CJ Cron was a guy I was obsessed with. He really, really failed me in terms of what I expected. I drafted up for him just about everywhere, and he was okay, but 481 expected slugging, not exactly what you want. 789 now in the early going of this season. I thought going to Coors was going to just upgrade him substantially. Guess who's not playing all of those same leagues this year? Yeah, this guy. So it's pretty tilting. I've still got him in a couple dynasty leagues, but like, my God, it is just so tilting that he's now starting to show it this year coming around, because this is what I expected from him in this lineup, in this ballpark. He just hits the ball hard and far. Did it with Minnesota, did it with Detroit. He's going to do it here in Coors this year and not last year, because that's how things work. But whatever. Yeah, see, Larry, I had him in 4 leagues. You know, it was the most tilting thing ever because he was supposed to be a god, but whatever. We're going to roster him. CJ Cron, Dom Nunez there in the 9-hole even. I'm getting to a number of these guys up and down the entire lineup here. Grichuk, 3,400, feels like a cash staple batting second. I find it impossible that you would fall on a lineup without him.
Yeah. I do have one question for you. So in the top pitchers tool, I know Shane Bieber's not in here, so you have to assume he's going to be second. But as of right now, we'd have Zach Eflin as the second best chance to be a top 2 pitcher. How do you feel about that?
Really horrible.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, so he's actually fifth now. We just got the update with Bieber up there, 41.3%. It just happened.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Things are happening constantly. It's a boom boom world that we're living in here today, my friend. But yeah, Zach Eflin's fifth. I think you got to roster some of him, 7,900. A little bit behind Mitch Keller. I think Mitch Keller I would prioritize a little bit more. I talked about it. Milwaukee can be dangerous. I don't like Mitch Keller, but the top two pitchers tool does. And I feel much more comfortable rostering him in Milwaukee than Zach Eflin in Colorado for 1,700 more.
Yeah, and they currently have him as the best chance to be a top two value. So I do like Milwaukee today, but at the same time, I could see Mitch Keller just skating by with a few runs given up and maybe like 4 to 5 strikeouts.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is Mackenzie Gore is just way too cheap. We'll get to that game. Is that next up on the board? Oh, sure is. Look at this. These are beautiful times. Also, I've got to add the Dodger game in there, too, to the bottom line. So we're going to flip and go down to the Padres one. Tyler, I love you. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. He's upset. It's okay. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. This is not on you. It's on me. Or not really. It's just on baseball. Vladimir Gutierrez going up on the mound for Cincinnati against Mackenzie Gore, who is planned to be the most popular value pitcher on this early slate. I think he should be. Talked about him before. I didn't really have a ton of interest in his first outing there. I know he's going to be all right long-term, but looking at some of his AAA numbers, it just wasn't the most impressive thing I've ever seen for a guy who was touted to be a pretty decent prospect. 2017 draft, third pick overall there. I'm all right with this prospect long-term, and I think that this is an all right spot against the Cincinnati offense to just, they're not good. You got a couple bats you have to avoid in Pham and company, but for the most part, how do you feel about Mackenzie Gore being the most popular value pitcher on this slate?
Yeah, if we're playing cash games, I really like him as my SP too. I mean, he made his first start last week with Snell on the shelf. He was fine. 5.1 innings, 2 runs, but only 3 strikeouts, which kind of sucked. Definitely limited his upside. I believe he only finished with around 11 points, but it was a tough spot as a lefty versus the Atlanta Braves. They are pretty solid versus them as far as their splits go, but this Reds lineup is not good, and they've lost several guys to the IL list. I know Jonathan India got placed on the shelf. I believe Mike Moustakas did as well, though it's not like Mike Moustakas is anything you should be scared of. And last night, I believe they had a guy named Friedel leading off. No idea who that is. Don't see him in the projected lineup as of right now, but outside of Tommy Pham, I believe he went deep last night, and Joey Votto, you're not really scared of much in this lineup. A team total around 3.5, and I'd say there's some very strong win equity as long as you can go the 5+ innings tonight.
Yeah, Tommy Pham is 2,600 on DraftKings. Am I looking at that correctly?
Yep. He's very
Brandon
cheap.
Drury is 2K on DraftKings. Am I looking at that correctly?
Yep.
Those are both guys that I think are all right to get to here. I think I might have to get to a little bit more of them going up against Gore. Once again, I get that he's this touted prospect and he's expected to be very, very good, but even at AA, AAA didn't really show a ton to me. So I'm okay to still have some pieces against him at the same time that I totally understand what everybody else is looking at. The stuff could be electric going forward. We shall see. Let's talk Padres bats on the other side of this one. How do you feel about the Padres? I mean, Manny Machado, you can play pretty much any day ending in Y. Gutierrez, nothing special here. Trent Grisham, I expect to be up in order here as well today. Who are your favorite Padres bats to get to?
Yeah, I like just about everybody here. Gutierrez last season, 5.07 xFIP, 17% K rate, about a double-digit walk rate. We'll give some pop. I haven't really loved the Padres early on in the season without Tatis, but this is definitely a spot I can get to. They're not overly expensive. Outside of Machado, we're talking just about everybody else being below 4K besides Cronenworth at $4,100. So Grisham, lefty and righty spot. Austin Nola, prefer him versus lefties, but he hits pretty high in the order for a catcher, so I'll always take that at the catcher position. Machado's been hot. I feel like he's homering just about every single night now. Cronenworth's fine. Luke Voigt, Eric Hosmer, like the entire lineup, I think you can play, and it just to try to get different, just kind of differentiate your stacks. Like maybe you get some at the bottom half of the order. It's obviously not as nice, but if you just leave off Machado in a Padres stack, which might seem stupid, it's a decent way to get contrarian.
Yeah, I feel pretty decent that Manny Machado is a guy to get to as a one-off pretty much every single time. And Austin Nola talked about a catcher. I think everybody stands out. The problem is they're so damn popular. I mean, it's really hard to imagine I want to go overboard with them in this spot when you have Coors on the slate that I think you can get to. yeah, you're going to probably sacrifice an arm between the Woodruff and the Bieber spot. I know there's going to be a lot of people who build lineups with both of them and then try to find some value bats and build around that. I think that's all right, but it's going to be difficult for me to want to play a ton of Padres at their current popularity, but I totally get it. 17% ownership share, actually one of the most negatively leveraged team to get to on DK, but pretty unavoidable to at least have some. Anything else for you in this game before we talk Dodgers and Braves to round out the session?
No, I mean, cash games, Mackenzie Gore is probably the guy I'm getting to, but I can see the case for maybe a cheap Cincy stack to combat that chalk.
All right.
Yeah, Cincy stacking.
Yeah, I knew what you were saying. Charlie Morton, Tony Gonsolin here. Atlanta Braves, Dodgers. 4.1 implied runs here for the Braves. 4.4 for the Dodgers. Two very, very good pitchers, but they're going up against very, very good teams. Tony Gonsolin not really stretched out in a way where we can get to him in a meaningful amount, but that's kind of the story of Tony Gonsolin forever. What are you planning to do with pitchers in this game?
So for me, I like the Morton side better.
Yes.
I can make the case for Gonsolin as far as his 26% K rate goes, but at the same time, we're talking a 14% walk rate, which can get him into trouble. And especially since he doesn't go very deep into the game, 14% walk rate, we might not see many innings out of Gonsolin, plus a tough matchup. But for Morton, this is a power on power matchup. Morton's a very good pitcher, kind of struggled in his last start, but 3.39 xFIP, K rate north of 28%. The Dodgers, obviously a fantastic lineup. We know that, but Max Fried had a decent game last night, and Morton has the upside to get through here unscathed.
Saying he had a decent game is kind of underselling it a little bit. He was perfect through 5 1/3. I mean, I watched that whole game. It was disturbing how good Max Fried was. And it wasn't any trickeration. I mean, he was flat out good. I don't really know what to think about it. It feels like a blip on the radar, but Charlie Morton, phenomenal pitcher. Yes, we will talk about some of the pricing here for Atlanta too, because it seems like something to discuss. It got the drop for facing. Now, I don't know why the prices didn't drop to face Kershaw, but they definitely dropped to face. Why am I just blanking from yesterday? They're obviously number 2 guy. I just keep seeing his Walker Buehler. I'm looking at him as the guy that just basically all these prices dropped off a cliff. They maintained here going up against Tony Gonsolin, who once again, just not ever stretched out, not really there in terms of K percentage this season so far, but he's been historically around a 25% K percentage guy in his time in the bigs. I don't think he's a complete write-off for this slate going up against Atlanta, but Atlanta is going to definitely be a value team that you're going to want to get to. It's about flat in terms of leverage. But how do you feel about Gonsolin?
Gonsolin's interesting just to like combat some of that Atlanta chalk. Like they're not going to be insanely chalky compared to like Milwaukee, Coors Field, and San Diego. They're still going to have some decent ownership, and they're by far they're right up there with Cincy as far as being the top value stack. But a lot of people are going to get the Atlanta over Cincinnati on this slate. But I do think Gonsolin's interesting. If he can just have good control, the strikeout upside is there. If he can maybe get the 5 innings, that might be pushing it if he's efficient. But I mean, if we're hunting strikeout upside in DFS, Gonsolin does present a 25+% K rate, which is good enough for me to have some interest.
All right, let's talk bats because again, Atlanta for this slate, they got that price slash up and down the lineup. It's absurd. I talked about Matt Olson being the only other guy that I'd consider at first in terms of cash games. I'm not playing those, so I don't have to think about it so much. But even as a one-off, I've got to get to quite a bit of him. Anytime he faces a righty, just an immense amount of power. Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley, Travis d'Arnaud, not as appealing, but I'm still going to get to a little bit of this team just in terms of stacks. So cheap. You're going to play them alongside Woodruff and Bieber. That's the kind of path and why you would want to get to this team. How do you feel about Atlanta and their chances of success against Tony Gonsolin?
Yeah, even if they don't put up like 8+ runs, there's a decent chance this is a very good value stack on the slate. I mean, yes, Gonsolin is very good, but these Braves bats are also very good. Matt Olson is the guy that I'd expect to be paying over nearly $5,000 for most nights, and we are getting him at $3,600, which makes no sense. He's only $600 more than Rowdy Tellez. It doesn't make much sense to me. And they're priced like they're facing Jacob deGrom. And Gonsolin is obviously a fine pitcher, but he's not Jacob deGrom. So I love the price tags on these. The entire bottom half of the order, at least projected lineup, is $2,500 and below. So if you were spending up for pitchers, you can stack up the Braves and get another really decent stack in addition to those guys. So I do like them as far as value goes.
And the Dodgers, you can stack them against anybody, good pitcher, bad pitcher. And obviously, when you're facing a good pitcher like Charlie Morton, you're going to get them completely unowned, even on a 5-game slate. Yes, they're expensive to get to. Yes, they only have a top stack potential of 9.2%. That's middle of the road on this slate. But they are the most positively leveraged team to get to besides Philadelphia, which is kind of surprising. But the Dodgers, if they're not popular, you just kind of have to stack them up, right?
As good as their bats are, like I know we both like Charlie Morton a lot tonight in tournaments, but at the same time, the Dodgers lineup's a good play in tournaments as well. So I want both sides of this game.
All right, my friend. Wow, we did it. We got through the 2 main slates for DraftKings, but now, Tyler, I love you. Don't hurt me. I know it is what it is. Baltimore, Oakland, they moved the game up. It is still on the FanDuel slate. Now the FanDuel slate is going to start at 6:07 p.m. Eastern time. Are you prepared? Can we talk a little bit about these early games for the FanDuel folks, Chris?
It'll be a little makeshift, but I'm sure I can find something to talk about.
I was going to say, they have games moving up different times. Now they also just said that it's still going to be I'm looking at the top bar on FanDuel. They said that this Tampa Bay Chicago game, just be aware, it now locks at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That is going to be on the FanDuel slate still. So won't be DraftKings applicable, I don't think, unless they just change the entire slate time start. But now with Baltimore, Oakland at 6:07 p.m. Eastern time, that's the first one to discuss. On the mound, Dalton Jeffries and Jordan Lyles, your 2 projected guys here. Be on the lookout because there's scattered showers there in Oakland. You still have the opportunity of some stuff being an issue there weather-wise. That's why they moved it up. But I think it's going to be good to go. And so long as it is, I don't really know how I land on these 2 pitchers. How about you?
No, they're both really bad. I mean, if you're looking at Dalton Jeffries, 12.5% K rate since last season. And then for Jordan Lyles, he's sitting a little bit better, 18.6%, but both guys are on a 5x FIP. I see no upside here. I know the offenses aren't good for either team, but when the pitching's this bad, you almost have to have some interest in the bats.
All right. Can we flip this to an NHL show? I don't get that. I don't understand what that means, Terry. But I mean, we could just talk about anything at this point. I'm just trying to give the people more information here. These would be 2 offenses. It's not a great ballpark by any means, but it's still one that you got to consider just because of the ineptitude that is on the mound from both sides of it. Who kind of sticks out to you from the Baltimore side? Again, Cedric Mullins always stands out to me, but it's just really difficult to know how I want to full stack them. But I want to against somebody named Dalton Jeffries that I just don't believe in.
Yeah, and Mullins is pretty expensive. He's definitely a bat that really does stand out, but we're talking about a 3.6 implied team total currently, so it's not anything too impressive. But guys like Trey Mancini, he's always had some decent righty-on-righty power. Santander's got some pop at the top of the order, or top half of the order, I should say. Ryan Mountcastle is fine. I've always liked the Orioles better versus lefties. They're kind of pesky versus them. I know they struck out like 12 times a couple of nights ago to Nestor Cortez, but they do profile a bit better versus lefties. But I think this entire lineup is playable just because it's Dalton Jeffries on the mound. But on paper, they're not going to look too pretty. But the top half of the order is certainly in play.
Dalton Jeffries, the lowest top pitcher percentage on the entire board for the FanDuel slate. Do not roster him. Also, probably not going to be rostering Jordan Lyles, although he has the top value percentage on the entire board. That's pretty shocking to see. But looking at the projected Oakland lineup, you get guys like Sheldon Noose. That should be a decent enough guy up top there. Billy McKinney's been batting cleanup for them. 2.3K, if you feel like such things for FanDuel purposes. What sticks out to you from the Oakland side?
Tony Kemp, Sheldon Noose. I believe I played Sheldon Noose on FanDuel last night. It didn't really end well. He got 3 points, but he's cheap at, I believe, $2,400 over on FanDuel. Sean Murphy, Billy McKinney. Like, none of these guys are going to stand out. Like, this is probably the worst name value offense in the entire league besides maybe Sean Murphy. But Jordan Lyles is a guy that I've been picking on for years. Like, ever since he was in Texas, I'd always seem to stack against him. And just, he's not a great pitcher, gives us some pop, doesn't strike out many guys. So while it's not pretty, we still have a team total close to 4 here for the A's. So McKinney's probably my favorite bet. He's only $23 over on FanDuel, so he does great as a pretty decent value.
Nobody from Baltimore. I'm going to have some Cedric Mullins from Baltimore. I'm going to have some Ryan Mountcastle. I'm going to have some Santander. I'm going to have a lot of these guys. Well, not a lot. I just said something that I did not mean. I'm going to have a little bit of these guys. It's just too good of a spot on both sides of it here, even with 2 bad offenses. Anything else from this game whatsoever?
It's ugly all around, but I mean, something might pop here on the bat side, but it's not pretty.
All right. I think we can skip Tampa Bay, Chicago. We already covered that earlier on the DK's portion. Check that out if you guys are interested here. Angels at Houston, 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. This game is starting, and it's Shohei Ohtani and Jake Odorizzi. Jake Odorizzi, extreme fly ball pitcher. That's kind of the prototype for what he's always been there, going up against an Angels lineup that, as long as it doesn't have Mike Trout in it, is going to be problematic here. We'll see if he ends up back in it. He hasn't been put on the IL, so I think there's hope there going up against Jake Odorizzi, but we'll talk about bats in a second. I want to talk about my boy, my absolute boy, Shohei Ohtani, middle of the road in terms of top pitcher percentage, 5.6% on the FanDuel board, but only 3.5% ownership for a guy that when he's on, he's on. And I know Houston is not the team you want to go out of your way to pick on whatsoever. One of the lowest K percentages, if not the lowest K percentage we're going to see over the course of this season. Last season, that was definitely the case. This season, we shall see. But I'm willing to take shots on a 3% Shohei Ohtani on any slate. How about you?
Oh, for sure. I love playing Ohtani when he's pitching. I mean, 30% K rates dating back to last season at 3.45 xFIP. The only concern I would say is 8.2% walk rate. But when he's on his game, he's got good command. But I mean, there's some times where he can get sporadic, and it's going to be a quick night for Ohtani. But it's more often than not these days that Ohtani is going to be on his game. And he just faced this Houston team, I believe, in his first start of the year, if I remember correctly. Ended up having 9 strikeouts versus them. Very overall solid game. I have no problem at all. If you're playing the turbo set on DK, I believe he's only $7,300 compared to $9,100 over on FanDuel, so a lot easier to get over there. But I am definitely on board with some Shohei Ohtani. Love using him as a pitcher.
Yep, love using him as a pitcher, and I'm also obsessed with stacking up Houston. I feel like that's something I've done an abnormal amount of times this season, but looking forward to having this go very, very well for me. Luckily, can't play him on DK because then SB2 Shohei Ohtani today would be a problem for me. So I appreciate DraftKings not having this on the main slate. Looking on the other side of this, Jake Odorizzi, talked about it a little bit. Extreme fly ball pitcher, not somebody that I'm going to land on a whole heck of a lot. Pretty much anybody that isn't Rodon or Bassett on this slate is going to go very underlooked. Alcantara, St. Louis and Miami, I guess we'll talk about them in a second. But looking at Jake Odorizzi, no interest in terms of attacking this not good Angels lineup without Trout, right?
Yeah, I mean, Odorizzi is just an option where it's just never really fun playing. I mean, an xFIP just around 5, a K rate below 20%. The walk rate's okay at 7.7%, but even though he's not a great pitcher in the Angels lineup, if Trout's not in it, is obviously not amazing, but I'd still feel like I'd rather get to the Angels than I would play Jake Odorizzi.
All right, well, this Angels projected lineup, looking at it, again, you got to wait and see if Trout's going to be a part of it. That matters a heck of a lot. We can't roster Ohtani. That sucks too. So it becomes Trout, Walsh, Rendon, Marsh. I mean, this is just not the most appealing team to get to. If it doesn't have Trout, you can't play Ohtani. It's kind of a bummer, but still has a 7% top stack potential. That's 4th best on the slate. I don't really know what I want to do with them yet. Do you have any clue what you plan on doing with this team?
And I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach and what we get news with Trout. I mean, if Trout's out of the lineup, it's like we're talking about Jared Walsh, Rendon, Taylor Ward, Brandon Marsh. It's not as nice on paper. Trout will make a real difference.
All right. Everybody smash that like button for my friend Chris over here, putting in overtime. I mean, this is now an hour and a half in. Everybody's working for the week, and it's hump day. That's what this is. That's probably why I'm so hyper. Let's go to the Houston Bats side. So Shohei, I don't know how much I want to really be going up against a not popular Shohei here. Not a lot of leverage to be acquired, but pretty much if you're not going to attack Carlos Rodon, which I don't think anybody's really planning on doing today, there's not a lot of leverage to be had in any individual spot on the FanDuel slate. So kind of just looking for best offenses. And I think you have your Alvarez, Kyle Tucker as guys that are just going to always pop in my model against any righty. So there's that. But I don't know what I want to do in terms of full stack potential here for this team. What do you plan to do with Houston today?
Well, you forgot to mention their best hitter.
Jeremy Pena?
No, Michael Brantley.
Oh, I hate you so much. I forgot. I was just being sarcastic about Jeremy Pena, and then you were more sarcastic with Michael Brantley. Go ahead.
No, these guys are fine plays. I mean, obviously, it's a great lineup up and down. Michael Brantley, Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker, Yuli Gurriel. I prefer the lefties here. But again, I love using Shohei Ohtani. So even while they're a decent leverage spot, it's kind of a stalemate. Like you have an amazing pitcher going against an amazing offense. I usually give the edge to a good pitcher over a good offense because they're easier to project than an offense that, when they have success 30% of the time, it's a good time for them. So for me, if I had to use anybody, it's the lefties and Brantley, Alvarez, and Tucker, but outside of that, not too interested.
Look at that. News God hops in chat. He knows we're going to need the Mike Trout news whenever that drops. Obviously, we have forever. This game doesn't start for a long time, 3:40 my time, 6:40 p.m. Eastern time for people who use regular hours, I suppose. Anything else from this game whatsoever?
No, I'm just excited to watch this one, Ohtani versus the Astros.
Me too. St. Louis, Miami, and then we will end with the New York Yankees game and Detroit Tigers. Looking forward to that one. But St. Louis, Miami here. Alcantara, Miles Mikolas, one pitcher I really like. Alcantara, one I don't. Miles Mikolas. Let's talk Alcantara here right off the bat. He is coming in popular. He's been very popular on a lot of these FanDuel slates. Totally get it. I don't know if I want to get carried away with him to the tune of 12.2% when he's only a 5.6% top pitcher percentage. Might be the one guy I kind of write off on the FanDuel board for today. How about you?
Yeah, he's always appealing to me, but the strikeout rate's not as high as some of the guys he's priced around. Like if you're looking at Ohtani, he's $100 cheaper over on FanDuel. He's got a 29% K rate compared to Sandy sitting at 23%. And plus the Cardinals, they're a team that are a lot better versus lefties, but they still don't strike out very much versus righties. So while I think he'll be decent as far as run prevention goes, I don't think that strikeout upside is going to make him an optimal pitcher tonight.
All right. And that kind of cleans it up because, Miles Mikolas, you could give me 10,000 lineups and I don't think I get to a share of him.
Yeah, he's almost $9,000, and we're talking about a guy that 17% K rate. So it's like, what's the upside there?
The upside is everybody else on the board fails. So maybe out of 10,000, again, that's the upside is that it just failure. It exists in the world.
That it does, but I just don't see it happening at that price point.
It's kind of like me putting this run sheet together today. Let's go to the St. Louis batters here. Going up against Alcantara, I'm going to have some interest purely because of how popular he is, but everybody's sitting like 1% owned. They probably should be, but there's positive leverage. I think Arenado, major league hitter, proven to be okay. Tyler O'Neill, tons of pop. Paul Goldschmidt. I'm going to get to this team more than I should. I can already tell you that. Maybe 4 or 5%. And that's a lot when you're talking about a team that's 1% owned. Who's your favorite hitter to get to from St. Louis?
For me, it'd be Tyler O'Neill. I just love his power upside. But if you want a cheapie, Corey Dickerson, $2,200 lefty on righty spot. I don't know. It doesn't feel great, but if you have to find some value, he's not going to be owned today, and he's dirt cheap.
I don't hate it. Miami Marlins, Jorge Soler. You've got Avisal Garcia, who I just love. I love this man. I wish Mikolas. He's not popular because why would he be at that number? It just makes no sense to me. So I'm feeling as though I'm not going to play as much as I would want to in this kind of a spot. They've got 4 implied runs here. Miami, that is. It's not the best ballpark, their home ballpark, but enough hitters that I feel like I might want to get to in like a 4-3-1 type situation on FanDuel. That being Soler, Cooper, Sanchez, whole top of this order, maybe some Jazz Chisholm or Wendell in the bottom half of the order. What sticks out to you from the Miami Marlins side?
Yeah, Avisal Garcia, you said you love him. I do like him too. I'm not in love with him, but batting fifth, he has some pop. What was that?
I'm in love with him. Nobody recognizes. Real recognize real, homie.
I gotcha. Garcia does have pop versus lefties and righties, though. He's sub 3K over on FanDuel. I think he's a fine tournament play. Jorge Soler probably does strike out quite a bit. Definitely some pop at the top of the order, and you have that prime batting spot. So Soler and Garcia, the ones I like the most, and you can kind of dabble in the 1 through 5.
All right. Anything else here? We got one more game.
No, let's just knock it out.
All right, here we go. Luis Severino, I now invested in because of Greg Ehrenberg. I was also in the great state of Arizona for Easter. I'm able to get some coin on AL Cy Young winning Luis Severino. That would be fun. He was 100-1. He was actually 50-1 when I got him. So I'm not even going to lie to you, but now he's up to like 30, 35-1. As those innings get extended, he could be a very, very good pitcher. He gets to face Detroit in Detroit. That seems like a good spot for him. We'll see what the pitch count really looks like, but I want to talk Eduardo Rodriguez, and our friend Terry McBride brings up a very interesting point. Higher number, Erod Ks or Erod unlucky earned runs, because this guy is just an anomaly in every sense of the word. 4.74 ERA in 2021, 3.47 expected ERA. You would think that might be a blip on the radar, but every single year of his career since his rookie season, he's had a lower expected ERA than actual ERA, and it's not remotely close. How do you feel about Erod going up against this Yankees team that is definitely dangerous, but definitely has strikeouts to be had?
Well, I still feel bad from the last time I rostered Erod. I believe I was on the show with you when we were talking about Erod and Nathan Eovaldi. He was cruising for a while, and then I believe he had 2 outs. There was a throwing error.
Cruising, homie.
Yeah. And there was a throwing error, and then I believe 7 runs came consecutive, like 6 doubles in a row, I want to say. Then he saw him yanked. I mean, DFS wise, it could have been worse because those were all unearned, but it just goes to show you how unlucky Erod is. But if you look at, below the surface, a 3.5 xFIP, a 27% K rate, like, he is a good pitcher. The Yankees lineup, obviously a ton of potent power versus left-handed pitching, but they will strike out quite a bit. I think this is certainly a good GPP spot at $7,100.
Yeah, he's 1% owned against this offense that has not shown a whole lot in the early going. They're going to be fine. It's the Yankees. They're going to be just fine. Weather will warm up and the ball's going to go Yahtzee. But I'm looking at Eduardo Rodriguez as a guy that I want to be over 4% of. He's 1% at projected ownership, 4% top pitcher percentage. But Severino even 6.5% top pitcher percentage. That's 4th best on the slate, 9.4% ownership. How do you feel about his chances of going deep against this Detroit team?
It was encouraging. The first game, he had 65 pitches, but in that last game versus Toronto, 83 pitches. So that was nice to see the bump. We should see him close to 90 in this game as long as all goes well. He has 11 strikeouts through 2 starts, gave up 2 hits in his last game. He didn't give up a run either. I mean, it's a good spot versus Detroit. They're no longer a pushover matchup, but there's still some strikeouts to be had here.
All right. And let's round it all out here. Bats season. Yes, I love Erod, but also this Yankees offense is just ridiculous and will be going forward here. There's pretty much no leverage to be had, 0.2% leverage, nothing crazy there, but this is a team that you would see be 15% rostered at their current prices if they had been better to this point in the season. So if you just throw 2022 out the window going up against Erod here in this spot, I feel like you got to have a lot of interest. I have a lot of interest. Do you?
Oh, yeah, I certainly do. As far as the Yankee side goes, we're talking about the Yankees, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah,
sorry, I might have just been, I don't know. It's an hour and a half of talking about baseball with slates changing and times changing, and I'm trying to just keep track of everything. And also make sure I get out of here before, 1 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, yeah, my brain's frying right there with you. But Aaron Hicks, $2,500. He's fine. I mean, he's not like the best hitter in this lineup, obviously, but if you're going to give me a guy below 3K in the Yankees lineup, leading off versus a lefty, I don't mind it. Aaron Judge obviously crushes left-handed pitching. Anthony Rizzo, kind of in a weird spot. Don't love lefty on lefty for him as much, but interesting for tournaments. Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, if I had to pick 3, it's probably Donaldson, Stanton, and Judge, and obviously Hicks is a fine just leadoff option.
All right, well, let's talk Detroit Bats. I don't have a ton here. You got Torkelson, who's up to 3,200. Why yet? I know he's a young prospect that's needed and wanted and couldn't be good, but this is not. This ain't it for me. Austin Meadows might be the one bat I roster a little bit of. Anything from Detroit to round it out?
Now, Austin Meadows, if I had one, I'm not going to stack Detroit up probably on this. I do like Luis Severino quite a bit. Austin Meadows, though, he's kind of like Brandon Lau for me, where I just love using him as like maybe a one-off. He just has plenty of power versus righties. And $3,200 isn't an extensively price tag on him, but it's kind of a bit much for a team I'm not really planning on stacking up much.
All right. Any final thoughts? Chris, my God, we made it. I think we covered 48 baseball games today and 13 different slates, and things were happening and things got moved around. Be aware, I'm assuming that Tampa Bay Chicago game is going to be off the DraftKings slate. I think FanDuel is going to keep all of anything that happens after 6:07 p.m., I believe it'll be, on that main slate as well. Early slate, broke that down for you. It's just 3 games on FanDuel, so good luck if you're doing that one. We covered the 5-gamer for DK, but my God, Chris, any final words for the people?
I think my final words are to get a power nap in until 1 and then start building your lineups.
That's a good idea. I'm here for that. Tyler Xander, thank you so much for dealing with all of the madness that is today. It was good times, though. I wouldn't have had it with anybody else except for Jordan Klein. That would have been okay, too. But you know what? I'll take Tyler Xander. I'm all right with it. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. We're going to get out of here. Make sure you guys pay attention. We've got tons of content coming up later in the day. A bunch of NBA games on slate. I will be on the NBA Live Before Lock show, per usual, with my buddy Greg Ehrenberg. We're going to be doing an hour sponsor post-lock show Looking forward to that one. Thank you so much to Prize Picks for their sponsorship of this and of that NBA show coming up. We've got MLB Live before lock. That'll be Eitan and Neil coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern time as well. So check out that. He's Chris. He's awesome. I'm Eric. I am Awesemo's awesome person. I don't know. I got to leave. Bye.